I like monkeys. So I feel really lucky that apparently somebody decided that 2024 was going to be the year of monkeys. This spring has been filled to the brim with movies about apes and monkeys and primates of all sort. Me and my girlfriend Brie have been celebrating it by watching all sorts of ape movies at home while we get ready for the new ones that have been coming out in theaters. We've dubbed it April, but it's also in May, so April plus Monkey May? Uh, Spring of the Monkeys? You know, I'll figure out a name for it later. But as of right now, I'm going to review each of these monkey/ape movies that have been coming out this spring. I hope you enjoy monkey business. I really like the Monsterverse. They have been cool, fun movies from the very beginning, and it's been exciting seeing them get crazier and crazier as they've gone on. My friends and I even had a big watch party for Godzilla vs. Kong when it came out, because we spent so much time debating how that fight would go. But now, I think this universe has reached its crowning achievement of crazy. Let's just say, if you combine Godzilla, King Kong, Marvel, Avatar, Primal, and a little bit of Pokemon, you get Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. This movie goes nuts. There's just so much zany violence between all these gigantic, weird creatures with insane powers, and it never lets up for a second. In fact, it adds more sci-fi weirdness by giving the humans this outlandish futuristic technology, part of which they use to give King Kong a lightning power glove. It sounds like it would be tiring, but it's lighthearted and breezy enough that you can just have stupid fun with it. But that's both a good and bad thing. On the one hand, these are weird monsters, and I want to see them have crazy supernatural fights. And I want to see magic and sci-fi nonsense and epic battles. And the movie has that in spades, and still somehow wraps up comfortably in less than 2 hours. But on the other hand, it's one of those movies that doesn't have any room to breathe. It feels like the music never lets up, because every minute is somebody, some character, going somewhere, doing something to advance the plot forward. And that leaves the moments of character growth, like the bond between King Kong and this tiny Kong, or the bond between Rebecca Hall and her daughter, feeling few and far between, and surface level at best. Plus, the light runtime creates this weird issue where characters will go very far distances in like a second. Another problem it creates is with the effects. You can tell they are stretching that VFX budget as far as it'll go. Don't get me wrong, the monsters look great, and a lot of that is due to some fantastic designs, but the physics on stuff like splattering liquids and big lasers and stuff looks generic and pretty poorly rendered sometimes. Speaking of physics, there's a big problem with them. Literally, the giant monsters in this really don't feel all that giant. They barely interact with anything normal sized, and the way they move never makes them feel big, because they just move with the same weight as any regular animal, when the animation on them should be communicating that they're moving with immense weight. These issues, plus the lack of any exploration of emotional consequences, makes it feel like the movie has abandoned any sense of realism. And it does have me missing the early days of this universe, with the stuff like Godzilla and Kong Skull Island, where a lot of care and attention was put into making them feel colossal, and making the devastation of their impact feel just as big. With this movie though, it's basically a big budget cartoon, because you can't feel the weight of these monsters, and there's no emotional weight to the impact of these fights that are implied to kill thousands of people. But at the end of the day, if you just treat it as a mindless cartoon, it's a pretty good one. And I just can't bring myself to hate a cartoon with designs this cool, action this fun, and sometimes hilarious. So, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire? More like Godzilla x Kong: The Mid-Empire. It's not the most sophisticated monster movie, but it's a ton of fun. There's one word to describe Monkey Man. Cool. This movie is the essence of cool. You got a dude in a monkey mask doing underground fights while spending all of his off time from that training up to get revenge on the people that killed his mother. And every moment of it is awesome. You know how some action movies are described as YouTube clip movies? Like, you never really go back to rewatch the whole thing, you just rewatch the epic set pieces on YouTube. Every scene of this movie would make for a sick clip to revisit. There is no wasted time in this. Because as soon as an action scene ends, it'll start a scene of character development or emotion that is just as engaging as the action. And that's because it's just as brutal. You know what? I rescind my original statement. There are two words that describe this movie. Cool and brutal. The action in this is not fun. When he's fighting, you can feel how painful every hit he delivers and every hit he takes is. When he flashes back to what happened to him as a child, it is viscerally devastating and sickening. Even when he's just talking through all this with a guru, that feels brutal, from how raw and emotional it is. And when he gets his revenge, it is violent and bloody and oh so satisfying. Okay, I take it back again. There's three words that describe this movie. Cool, brutal, and satisfying. The action may not be as fast-paced and over-the-top as other films, but it flows with a satisfying rhythm that still feels grounded. There's a couple of scenes of characters passing items person to person, and one scene that's just him training with a punching bag to a sick beat that some dude is playing on the drums for him, and it just feels good to watch. And the journey as a whole of him processing this trauma and enacting his bloody revenge, there's really no other word for it but satisfying. You would expect a film exploring grief to show that revenge isn't the answer, and maybe some of that is in here and I just missed it, but to me it seems firmly on the side of violence is the answer in this situation. I think that's because they do so much to show what horrible injustices the main character and the people around him have to face, and it's awful to watch. So to see that cruelty turn around onto the people that caused it in such a huge way is cool and brutal and satisfying. So, Monkey Man? More like Monkey Gas. I don't know why I've never seen a Planet of the Apes movie before this year. I mean, they're perfect for me. I love science fiction, and I certainly love apes. So I knew I had to get caught up on the most recent trilogy after all the great stuff I've heard about it. And yeah, after watching them, all that great stuff is true. This is one of the most consistently great trilogies I've ever seen. The character work is awesome from beginning to end, the effects get better and better with each one, and it's overall a fantastic experience. My girlfriend Bree got really excited for them too, so we've both been geeking out with excitement for the newest entry, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And it did not disappoint. Set 300 years after the previous trilogy, this movie introduces us to the new world that the apes have built after the fall of humanity, and the visuals that come with it are incredible. Personally, I'm really drawn to the visual of man-made structures that are so old and abandoned that they're overgrown with greenery and vegetation. And lucky for me, this movie has that in spades. The way these apes have built their little Bronze Age society on the skeleton of old cities and stuff makes for such cool, unspoken world building. Like how you see them climbing up trees and stuff that you think are growing out of mountains and cliffs, but they're actually climbing up a skyscraper, is visual storytelling that tells you the story of the last couple centuries so well. Well, mostly. Okay, let's get the first negative I have out of the way now. While the unspoken visual world building is fantastic, they do get into some exposition about what's happened between trilogies, particularly what's happened to the humans, that just doesn't make sense to me. I know this is a world of talking apes, so there should already be suspension of disbelief, but the ape stuff is built up so believably that it's disappointing that some of the backstory decisions they made feel so far-fetched. But it helps that they don't hang on it too much, and they spend most of their time on this cool ape world. And these characters are some great apes. Just like with the old movies, you really care about them and their connections with each other and their little society. The main character is your standard, likable protagonist with a good heart, but his dedication and the way he overcomes his flaws is what makes you really want to stick with him through this journey. And it's a really cool journey. What I like about it is that it clearly follows the classic hero's journey. You see his everyday life, then he gets called to adventure, he meets a mentor, he faces challenges. It's an old formula, but it stuck around for a reason, because it made for a very enjoyable story here that introduced even more cool characters that flesh out this world even more. The mentor is this awesome orangutan who explains to the audience the effect that Caesar has had to this point in time, as he claims that he follows his real teachings while the villainous apes do evil things in his name. It's such a fascinating commentary on religion, as we see stuff like this in our real world all the time. But as an audience to this fictional world, we definitively know that this guy is more on the mark of what Caesar was about, but he still has some facts, some very important facts, completely wrong. But going back to villainous apes, let's talk about this movie's villain, Proximus Caesar. He is so fun to watch. He strikes the perfect balance between mustache-twirling, campy evil and a legitimately interesting and intimidating threat. If I were to have one gripe about him, it would be that I wanted more of him. Because what you see in the trailer is most of what you get from him in the film. Just kind of a big speech, another speech about his plan, and then a big punch-up toward the end. And when you really get down to it, his evil plan is the same as King Louis. He just wants all the knowledge that humans had. There's not much that he actually does that gets across how evil he is. Okay, he does own kidnapped apes as slaves, and that is evil, but there's nothing that he physically does himself. It's all through his minions. But when you get down to it, he has a great presence. And that's really impressive considering the impression he's able to make with such little screen time. Really, the whole movie is like that. Because as you can tell, I have some nitpicks with it that would be huge problems, but they're saved by the fantastic presentation and overall feel. Even if this movie doesn't quite reach the heights of the previous trilogy, it's still a super strong entry in the franchise that has me so excited for what they have planned for the rest of this trilogy. I just can't get enough of Planet of the Apes right now. You know what, maybe I should check out the original 60s movie. Wait, it's written by Rod Serling? Sorry, I gotta go watch this right now. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? More like Kingdom of the Planet of the Gas. Well, there you have it. That was all of the monkey/ape themed movies that have been coming out in the spring of 2024. I hope y'all enjoyed monkeying around with me and hearing my thoughts on these films. So once again, thank you for joining me for April plus Monkey May. Simian Spring. Primate Primavera. There we go. That's a good one. I like that one. Thank you for watching.